Welcome to the Road to Redemption podcast with your host, Cam Williamson. Each week, Cam sets out to shatter the labels and stigmas associated with mental health awareness by giving life lessons and raw overviews of events happening around the world.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to this episode of the Road to Redemption podcast. I am again your host, Cam Williamson. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Today's episode is going to be a little different. I'm not talking about anything specifically mental health or breaking news, but something that's been pressing on me to make a video about that I think is important because of who my demographic is. It's mainly younger men between the ages of really 18 and 35, and there's a lot of women mixed in there as well, but the main demographic is young men. And I think they listen to try to gain some insight. I hope not to just glorify the bad things that I've done. But I think that they truly listen to try to gain some insight. So I want to, as you can tell by the title of this, almost write a letter to my younger self. Now, as soon as I had this podcast idea, I was like, well, what age would I talk to? You know, immediately that song Letter to Me by Brad Paisley pops in your head. And I'm like, okay, he kind of talks to himself throughout his life. So let's start at the earliest age that I can remember. It's tough. I think the first age that I remember, I was 2 or 3 years old, and I was in a hospital. They thought I had a rare form of blood cancer. And I remember my dad laying next to me watching cartoons. They had taken me out of like the incubator thing I was in, and they had put me on the floor and let me lay with my dad for a minute. So what would I say to that younger version of myself? I don't know, because I don't really know what I was thinking or feeling at that time. I remember laying on the floor with my dad and just being like, oh, this is cool. Like, cool, I'm cool. I'm laying with my dad. So I guess I would tell myself in that situation that everything's going to be all right, whatever you're going through. Sorry. I don't know why I always get emotional talking about that. Next really important point in my life, I think would come at the time that I started really making friends. You know, I had a best friend. I was very fortunate to have a best friend for most of my life. So I didn't have a lot of friends. I had a very best friend, and I've talked about him for years. His name is Griff, and I was pretty much raised by his family. My mom worked a lot. My dad traveled a lot for work, and custody battles and stuff just kind of kept him away. So I was raised when I wasn't at my home with my mother. You know, when I was young, I was babysat by Griffin's mom. And we just did everything together. I mean, I spent before schools, after schools, every day during the summer. Like, they were my family. And during that time, I remember having so much fun. And I remember wanting so badly to make a positive impression on anyone, the people around me, because all I was used to was people leaving in my life. Like, all that really surrounded me when I was young was the talk that my dad wasn't around. No one really talked about why a whole lot, and anytime they did, it wasn't necessarily positive. And then when I saw my dad, he didn't try to bring stuff like that up. He just wanted to try to handle the business he had to handle as far as his work and stuff like that goes, but also spend time with us and give us a good experience as well. And I can see that in hindsight now. So I would tell my younger self, like, understand that you don't understand the situation that's going on around you. People are saying things and making accusations and repeating things that they're saying out of hurt, and they're saying out of, you know, anger towards people, but don't base your whole life off of it, right? Don't base your whole life off of this difficult relationships that you have with people in general, right? Not just with your parents, but I think you'll notice as this letter to myself goes on, that'll be a trend that we see. People pleasing and trying to keep people from leaving our lives. And then, I was raised by my best friend. I just remember pure happiness. So I don't really remember even coming up thinking like, oh man, my parents are divorced and stuff like that. It just didn't cross my radar. I never knew them together. So it wasn't like this weird thing. It was just what happened. It was my life. And then I remember when Griff and I stopped being friends. And it wasn't that we ever really stopped being friends. It's just as people do, we grew apart. So we were best friends from like kindergarten or preschool or whichever one it was. I just saw pictures of it the other day at Thanksgiving. We were at like our kindergarten graduation together. We were best friends, spent almost every damn day together until I think the 7th grade. When I went into the 7th grade, I went to one school, Pleasant View Middle School, and he went to another one, Norton Middle School, because of where we lived. At the time, that was kind of a crazy time because I remember, every time I drink these cold brews, my mouth gets super dry. It's a trick, so you drink more of them. I remember during that time was when I did start to realize how complicated things were in my life. I started listening, and this might just be an error of the times, but I started listening to a lot of like punk rock, Blink-182, rock music, rap music, Eminem that talked about like difficult relationships with parents and being angry and all these things because I was angry. Because at that stage in my life, everything wasn't as innocent. I was starting to notice the resentment that my parents had for each other because every time I would go back and forth and see one for any amount of time, I would get interrogated about what was going on over there, and then they would talk shit about any part of success that was happening at the other parent's house. And subconsciously, I grew up thinking that having anything in any form of success or doing well was something that should be seen as negative because of that. And again, I don't blame my parents for that, but it was people acting out of anger and hurt and, what they feel like may have been injustices at the time. So I would tell myself at the crucial point when, like, my parents, when I was 12, 13 years old going into 7th grade, they were still battling for custody over my sister and I. They'd been divorced since we were 2. So it's like things were never cool. There was like, I'm not trying to put my family on blast here, but like when I was 10 or 11, I found like the day before Christmas, they must have pulled a bunch of stuff out of storage, and I found a whole case full of voice recordings where my mom had to call my dad and the conversations between the two of them, and it just wasn't, it was terrible. It was terrible to listen to. And sorry, I had to send the message. And I, for the life of me, never saw my dad the same after that. For a very long time. It was really tough. It was tough because I heard my father speak so harshly to my mother. And all I had heard was negative about my dad. In retrospect, I've gone through a divorce and I've gone through custody battles, and I know how rough they can be and how much emotion goes into it and how much you care about your children and what you would do for your children and how you would speak to people. So I'm not excusing it, just like I don't excuse my own behavior when I speak to people in certain ways, but I understand it now more than I did that day before Christmas, listening to those recordings that I should have never found. But I did. So then Griff and I lose contact because we go to different schools, and this is where the stories you guys have heard forever and ever come in, and also I think the most important thing I can tell to young men. This is the point in time where my relationships with women become the most important thing overall, no matter what, whether it's grades, athletics, friends, hobbies, interests, passions, it doesn't matter. I developed, and I still don't know where, but I developed some sort of savior complex where I needed to save any woman that chose to interact with me. Now, I was never the type of dude that went out and sought after women. I didn't chase women. I didn't go places looking for women. I was never that guy in my single life at any age, whether I was in middle school all the way up to when I was going to bars. It just was never my thing. Also, remember, we didn't have like DM culture back in the day. So you had to physically be in a room with somebody for something to get hit off. And that wasn't even that long ago. Like up until 2013, 2015, you still had to have fucking conversations with people to have a real relationship with somebody. So imagine what it was like back in 2006, 2007, you know? So it was different to where I never wanted to bother anybody. Now, I always would have somebody with me who I knew. And usually they were very well known. So like my cousin was known everywhere we went. So just having the same last name as my cousin, most people knew about who I was or my last name because of my cousin. He was a very well-known athlete in our area, was his entire life, and so were his brothers. Both his younger brothers, both who were younger than me. So I had athlete all-stars above me and below me, and I was not an athlete all-star at all. I was the reject of the family for most of my life because all I cared about, no matter what sport I played, and again, I was good at a lot of sports, but I cared more about spending time with, showing love to, and trying to save these relationships that I was in, or these people with whom I was in the relationships. And it led to me thinking that the best quality of myself was being a good boyfriend, husband, whatever. And then I couldn't figure out, well, why is everybody else happy and everything looks the way it's supposed to look in the movies and in the magazines, but I'm fucking miserable because this life doesn't look anything like I think it should. And then you go, oh, well, you've had a completely skewed concept of what love, relationships, and and being treated fairly is. You might want to work on that. So then you work on that a little bit, and that brings you to where I am now. So I could only tell my younger self, the people that claim to love you when you're young, that's not in your family, but relationships that you have, understand that they're saying that only from the perspective of what they understand love to be. That should always be, anytime someone tells you that they love you for the first time, that you can acknowledge it, you should ask them, just so I'm clear, what do you understand love to be? What does that mean to you? Because if they just go, well, I love you, I love you. Teach people to have a healthy relationship with what that means, which means I care about you a lot. And over anything else, I want your best interest to prevail. That doesn't mean I'm going to make myself a floor mat for you and you're just going to walk all over me. We're going to come back and forth and we will compromise at points in our lives, but your overall safety and your well-being and you being the best version of yourself, I promise that I will always care about that more than anything else going on with me. And you can honor that, right? When you tell people you love them, you can honor that regardless of what happens in your lives. You could tell someone, you could realize that you have such love for someone one day, and the very next day realize the best way you can love them is to never be around them again because you're either bringing out bad versions of themselves that they're not ready to deal with yet, or vice versa. They do that to you, and then you just realize that it's not necessarily love, but maybe you're dealing with codependency type issues. Here's the hardest thing in the world, and I tell this story a lot to people that I don't say mentor, but people that ask me for advice. There's a one of my good friends, he's still a friend of mine, my buddy Egg. When he was newly in the military, he came to our unit, and I was in charge of, like, showing the new guys around. I was a specialist at the time. I was on top of my game, and I was about to be made corporal. I was working really hard to get my sergeant at the time. So I was trying to be, like, teacher's pet and show these guys what's what. But I wanted to be real with them. I had only come out of basic and AIT a short while ago, and I wanted to be real with these guys as to what they should expect. And I told them very distinctly, just like I'm telling you all now. I say, you're not going to listen to a word I say. You're going to hear it, and you're going to think that I'm telling you what I'm supposed to be telling you. And you're going to do what the fuck you're going to do, regardless of what I say here. Understand that I acknowledge that. And that same clip is valid right here as well. Okay? You cannot make someone learn a lesson that they are not ready to learn because they haven't suffered the consequences of not learning it yet. That goes with addiction. That goes with relationships that are toxic. That goes with financial purchases. That goes with our relationship with food. That relationship with social media. Everything. If it's not to the point where it's tearing you the fuck apart, you will not walk away from it. So, to the soldiers I was talking about, purchases. When you get out of basic in AIT, remember, I know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to a group of young dudes from the Midwest. I've heard them chit-chatting all day long about cars and shit that they don't fucking whatever. So I tell them, look, man, you're going to get out of basic. And for the first time, just in basic, you're going to see money like you've never seen before. Outside of your parents having tons of money, which I didn't know anybody in the group that did, you're going to see money like you've never seen before. Couple grand. Nothing crazy. And you're going to then get this freedom to go to AIT and you can start to buy clothes. What did I do? I bought the freshest Jordans. I bought like 7 pairs of fucking Jordans, not thinking about the fact I was going to have to take them shits home from Oklahoma. I bought the freshest tees, freshest hats to match all the shoes that I had. I was set. But I was broke. On day 1 of AIT, I was fucking broke because I bought a bunch of tobacco. I bought a bunch of snacks and shit. A bunch of stuff that when I showed up to AIT, they were like, you still can't have that shit. And I hid it. I hid it in my bunk, but that's not the point. So we move on past the relationships. If you guys want to hear about those, you can go find other episodes where I talk about those. Moving past those and moving into marriage. I would tell my young men, don't rush into being married. There's nothing honorable about being married. Let's get that out of the way, right? There's nothing honorable about it. It doesn't mean you've hit this honorable milestone in your life. It just means you convinced someone to marry you. That's all it means. People get married for citizenship. People get married for all sorts of fucking reasons. Let's not act like it's a noble thing and you've checked the block on the American Dream checklist because you got married. No, you got married because you found someone that you love and you two decided that under the court of law, you will bind yourselves together legally for the rest of your lives or, in today's day and age, until you get a divorce. Because you can't fucking stand each other. So I would tell people, don't rush into it. I would say at this point in my life, the best advice I could give on marriage is don't even consider it until after 25 years old. If you're not at least 25, date. Live together. This isn't the 90s where the pressure to not live together was so great because you were sinning against God and shit like that. Live together. Share bills. Share responsibilities. You know how many relationships fail when a motherfucker live together? Quick and in a hurry. You could be with someone for fucking years. Live together for 6 months and see if you don't find a whole different side of that person. It's different when you live together. Do that. Live together. And then live together for like 2 years. Because after living together for like 2 years, and you get past the initial phase of seeing all their wild, crazy shit that you didn't see in the dating phase, then hopefully both of you work on yourselves individually and as a collective, and you make it to this other phase of life where now you've lived together for like 2 years. You're either thinking about getting married or you're thinking about buying a house. You probably got a dog. Maybe you got a kid. If you got a kid, you're going to get married. Let's just be real. I'm not saying you have to, but I'm saying let's be real, you're probably going to. Because you're attached for life anyway. And that's the thing. A lot of people end up having kids and they go, oh, we should get married. Don't necessarily do that. You can have great relationships with your kids. Let me point out, not ideal ones. I have a good relationship with my oldest daughter, but it will never be ideal because I'm not with her mother. So I don't share a home with my oldest daughter every day. And in that regard, with marriage, I would say be very aware of the situation of your parents, right? If you're listening to this and you're 16, or I hope you're not 16, I talk a little wild for 16-year-olds. If you're 18 to 21 and you're holding a bunch of anger towards your parents because you think they did everything wrong, or you think that their marriage not working out was the detriment to your life, understand you're using that as an excuse, just like I did for years. Don't do that. You're not serving anybody by doing that, and you're not helping yourself by doing that. Understand that when you get to be about 25, nobody gives a fuck how your parents raised you. People judge you on how well you've dealt with your upbringing from the years of like 18 to 25. When you're 25 years old, people go, okay, but what did you do? Like, you've had a few years now, supposed to be college type, go out in the workspace type years, where people go, okay, I understand, and we'd love to hear your story, but what did you do about it? Did you let that story turn you into a drug addict or an alcoholic, or did you join the military and your life fall apart, or did you join the military, your life got together? Did you go off to college and you separated from your family? What did you do? Right? And that's how I'll end this episode and end the letter coming up to current days, which is your life. I'm almost 30. Your life comes down to what the fuck you do in it. And I've said this before. Who do you associate with? Who do you fall in love with? You don't always get the choice on that. So be careful who you spend time around. Who do you fall in love with? Who do you have kids with? Who do you marry? Who do you associate with as friends? The most important thing I wish I would have changed is I wish I would have focused on my passions more than the people around me. Because I would have chased music a lot harder, and I would have started stuff like this a lot sooner. I would have kept my ear to the grindstone and not been so focused on shit that wasn't really important to me, but I just wanted to prove to everyone I was getting my shit together. And now that I've, in my opinion, which is all I care about, have my shit together and am a good person, I just want to help other people that feel like them being who they are is not having your shit together. No, just understand you're trying to work stuff out. If you're younger than 25, dude, you don't know anything yet. Nothing. I'm not saying you can't have lived life. Dude, I had multiple kids that I lost, whether to abortion or stillbirths, by the time I was 23. I mean, I had already been in the deep throes of alcoholism since I was 15, 16. I was strung out on drugs, military service. I mean, dude, I was fucked. I mean, a lot of shit. And that I go to sleep every night hoping that I went through that, so hopefully I can share experiences like these and people can use them as stepping stones and even hear them and go, hey, that sounds a little bit like what I do. Maybe I can alter that. And if one person has a conversation with somebody in their life and goes, hey, I think it's important that I set this boundary here. I stopped doing this when we started being friends or when we got together, when we started talking again. I think it's important that maybe I step back for a minute and I start doing that again that was so important to me. Not saying that I'm not still going to make time for you and us and everything going forward, but I think I need to explore this side of myself. If someone's not willing to let you do that, then they don't love you. So move on quickly and go find those that do, and those that believe in you and believe that you do have something special about you, and whatever that is that you decide. Don't let other people tell you that if you don't grow up to be a star athlete, you're garbage, or if you don't go to college and become some business associate that you're garbage. Times have shown you that's bullshit. You could do anything in this world. Anything in this world. It's only due to your upbringing and then your own mental past a certain age that get you to where you are and where you ultimately end up being. So I love you guys so much. I'm out of here. Hey, we have a new clips page. Go check that out if you want to get subscribed to that. It's just little 3-minute clips that we throw up on TikTok and on Instagram. We made a whole YouTube page, so if sometimes the episodes go on a little long and you just want to hit some clips, do that. Hit the Road to Redemption podcast.com for all the merch that you guys are seeing. We got new designs coming out like any day now, so stay on the hook for that. And stay engaged with me. Hit me up on Instagram in the DMs. I don't DM anybody on TikTok, so you can't do it there. But yeah, you guys got my email. You can find that everywhere. Hit me up. I love you guys. Later.